Welcome to Inclusive Cyber, your front row seat to understand how a diverse mix of voices is not just necessary, but essential to protect our most sensitive computer networks and personal data. I'm your host, Danny Magallanes, and through my podcast, we shine the spotlight on the heroes and trailblazers from every corner of society who are redefining the diversity, equity, and inclusion frontier. Every episode is a step towards a cyber community that's as varied as it is united, where everyone has the keys to unlock their potential and the power to protect our digital world. Join us on this journey where every listen, every share, every dialogue inches us closer to this new reality. Today's episode has three incredible women who are making an impact in their profession and communities. Caroline Sanchez Crozier has been an entrepreneur for the past 3 decades and leads LatinX Digital Leaders Now, among other companies and nonprofits. Deb Martinez has been in the nonprofit space for the past 20 years as an executive, creating educational opportunities for underrepresented communities. And Cindy Munoz, who works for the federal government, is making waves on the lack of representation of Latinas in cybersecurity. I met them all during the Raices CyberCon last year. Our conversations have left me with a lot of optimism that working together, we can start making an impact. We talk about the respective nonprofits, gatekeeping, and projects in the horizon. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. I am super excited to talk with these amazing women. I had an opportunity to meet, I think it was 2 weeks ago, at the Raices Cyber.org's first conference dedicated to bringing in more Latinos, Latinas, Latinx, and allies into cybersecurity. It was serendipitous how we all met. I think I pinged you, Cindy, and I think we all ended up in lunch. You have been doing amazing work in your respective areas. I think there was a nascent kind of energy building up, and I think you all are partnering up to do something special moving forward. Caroline, I'll start with you. If you can just describe that energy and the why you're partnering with both Deb and Cindy.
Sure. So it was definitely, the energy there was just uplifting with 300 plus professionals in different walks of life, different nonprofits coming together. So for me, is the founder of LatinX DLN and nonprofit for digital equity in everything, how we live, learn, and work, felt that it was a place to come together and unify and bring our voices and come back to our own respective states or where we are from, to add value to that work that we're doing and that we could do better collectively. I'm happy to be here to see how we continue the conversation that we did throughout those 2 days.
Deb, would you like to add additional context to the meeting and what you're looking to get out of this collaboration?
It was fun to see Caroline and other people there, but it was so great to hear the energy, and feel it and see the people there. And the speakers were excellent. They were very in tune to the audience, but they also pitched their stories and told things that people like me that have been in this business for years can look at and try to capture and be more successful and help people in more career path. I was extremely appreciative that Caroline had given me the information and invited me to attend.
Yeah, that's awesome. But Cindy, I'd love to hear your perspective a little bit on the conference and then working collaboratively with Caroline and Deb.
Yeah, we all met at Raices Con, and what makes so special is that Raices Cyber is actually the first organization that kind of brings together the Hispanic and Latina, Latinx community. There's been a bunch of other kind of specific groups for Hispanics or Latinos in tech in some sort. So we all met there and came together. Raices Cyber also international. Danny, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. But can you go a little bit in depth between the partnership, the nascent partnership with both Deb and Caroline? I know you all are brewing something. I know we discussed that over lunch or dinner. Can you just talk about it from your perspective?
I can start and then Deb can continue. Yes, it's all about collaboration and making connections. So ours have started 2 years ago, actually, even before we joined with the RaicesCyber.org. And that's from where Deb is located and what she brings to the table in her nonprofit and what I bring to the table. So I'm based in Chicago, Illinois. I like to call myself a 1% Latina in tech entrepreneur of 35 years. And after doing the work, and most of our clients have been with schools, finding out that 35 years later, I'm still less than 1% Latina and tech entrepreneur. I knew that we needed to change something. As I keep saying, we need to disrupt the tech status quo. Those statistics are just not acceptable for Latinos and for Latinas, especially women of color in general. We just don't have the same presence and inclusion and representation. So what do we need to do differently? Our nonprofit is to do that, to do something different, to go deeper and start earlier in building that talent pipeline and to bring about opportunities that didn't exist 5-10 years ago, not only to the students, but to the parents, and also work very closely with the teachers who themselves were not exposed to this. So really, it's a very holistic approach to bringing about new opportunities in a growing field, very important to our country and very important to our community. And so that's when I said, Deal in Illinois cannot do it alone. We can bring a lot, but it's collective impact is what we need to do. So when I learned about Deb's background, I said it's a natural evolution. But Deb, if you can share what made sense to you to connect with us as we were not only in different states, but also bringing different things to the table.
Sure. My background not only is in higher education and in education generally, but during COVID, I oversaw bringing people together to provide education training and total wraparound services. So I worked with clinical psychologists, I worked with mental health facilities, I worked with homeless shelters. And you began to see the hopelessness in these people's faces in trying to get back to get a career path where they could really do something to get empower themselves to get better jobs, to do something different. Because a lot of people in our community were laid off from work because they were laborers. And so they couldn't go to work. And so I introduced them to OSHA training, GMA, CNA, and GNA, which are certified nursing assistance programs. I also gave them the opportunity to take IT programs that would allow them to get into training to go begin that pathway to get into a job, or the job give them a more detailed training. But we worked with unions. I worked with private companies. I worked with developers because they all needed that person that had cyber background. And so we hired a couple of people. I got some grants, large grants. I think I did 6 courses per year, and we all of those people got jobs. So that speaks to the outcome of what we can do if you can get the funding, if you can get the trainers, and if you can put that package together. Now, post COVID, a lot of these young people, especially, are desperate to go to the next step, and they need to get a better education. And a lot of them didn't have a GED. Some of them didn't speak English well. So that was part of what we had to evolve and get them into that pathway.
That's an awesome story from both you, Caroline and Deb. And I want to pull the thread a little bit about upskilling day laborers or people transition into cybersecurity. And then from my anecdotal evidence, I know a lot of people are going either the cyber certification route or the education route. But I'm hearing a lot of stories that's still not enough. So just curious on your perspective, what could be the root cause? And I'm just throwing that to anybody to answer that. We do have this pipeline that everybody's doing amazing work, but it seems like there might be gatekeepers.
Well, Cindy, your own personal story you shared with me at the Raices Con, your own professional story, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, and to do this alone is not easy. So Cindy, you may want to share some of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into that. Yes, there's a lot of gatekeepers. I think one area is HR not understanding what it is that a certain role actually needs. I think another one has to do with just certain, I don't want to use the word toxic, but certain requirements that are a bit unrealistic. I've seen job postings where it's like, oh, must have a master's degree, must have CISSP, it's entry level and pays $15 an hour. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not realistic. That's not, you're not going to hire any real talent with that. There's a lot of, I'll say, systemic issues as well. Algorithms do favor a particular demographic, and that holds back a lot of other qualified people from actually getting through the door despite meeting those qualifications. We really need to do a complete revamp of our HR systems, of the cyber culture, not to mention, and it's veering off a little bit, but we also have a retention issue, a promotion issue, so many things that even before someone starts, it's an uphill battle if they are not part of a particular demographic in tech.
I think Cindy hit it right on the money as far as HR and the systems that have been in place that have been not inclusive as far as the interviewers that are at the table. Many times they don't look like us, they don't come from our own backgrounds. So the choice, the way of the way they interview many times will knock out candidates for reasons that really aren't justified. Hence, our nonprofit is Digital Leaders Now, and to be inclusive, to have representation in all spaces, in leadership, because unless that happens, there's a bottleneck. There's a lot of roadblocks that are being placed where you never even get the interview. Sometimes it'd be just the name, your name. So you mentioned if your name is Hispanic, they may not even call you for whatever reason. So there's just a lot of things that have to be changing, and unless we grow and have people that are diverse and inclusive at all levels, the statistic that we talked about earlier of less than 8% of Latinos, but in the cybersecurity, I believe it's less than 4%. In women, less than, I think it's 1%. Unless we have greater representation in all spaces, this is going to continue. This challenge is going to continue.
Yeah, it definitely seems like an uphill battle. But just curious and pulling the thread a little bit, Cindy, I know you mentioned a lot of potential root causes. How did you navigate? Can you share your cybersecurity career journey?
Yeah, so my journey has been a little atypical compared to, I would say, the average cybersecurity professional. So I did my undergrad in supply chain management and my grad degree in cyber. Despite growing up around computers my whole life, my whole family has been very tech forward. So we've always had computers, we've always had the latest gadgets. I didn't do my undergrad originally in cyber because I didn't really find that welcoming environment or a place for me. And then after I graduated, I still wanted to do cyber. So I decided to just go for it anyways, do my master's. And I actually went through a program called Scholarship for Service. It is a joint effort between the National Science Foundation, DHS, and NSA to help bring cybersecurity talent into working for federal government. There are a list of requirements you must meet in order to even apply. And even just applying for government positions, there's a good chance you have to go through a clearance. And there's also a lot of areas where it makes it even more difficult for Hispanics and Latinos to even go through the clearance process for a number of reasons. So it's always been a fight to prove and reprove myself. But that's how I originally broke into tech. But I've always been in those spaces, always been in those areas. I just happened to apply for that scholarship, get it, and that was my route. But otherwise, whether or not I got that scholarship, I was still going to stay in tech and just navigate whatever way that was. It's been a journey, that's for sure. I love tech. I'm very passionate about it. I've always been a nerd. I've always been tinkering around with different toys and just playing on the computer. I remember building websites for fun growing up. So they're all out there somewhere. They're all defunct. But yeah, I had to convince myself that I belonged in tech and didn't let anyone else tell me no, and just kept persevering.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing your story and how you got into cybersecurity and just the resiliency, right? And then all the hurdles because a lot of people will just probably give up and say, okay, maybe that's not for me. And I hear a lot of young professionals or professionals transitioning in that they do want to give up. They're like, maybe this isn't for me. I'm like, no, don't stop. So hopefully that resonates with people listening to the call, that you just have to keep your head up and keep on pushing and knocking those barriers down. So I appreciate that story. Deb, I wanted to talk to you about your organization. I don't know if you mentioned it at the beginning of the call, but I want to make sure that all the resources, the resource that Cindy just mentioned for government resources and scholarships, I want to include that in links. But can you name of your nonprofits and just make sure that everybody is aware of all the great work that you're doing?
Sure. So the name of my nonprofit is Training Minds, and it's located in the DMV, the District, Maryland, and Virginia. We service people all over to provide them not just, see, I look at things like this. I can't give somebody education if they don't have anywhere to sleep. I can't help you if you're hungry. And if you're a single mom with 4 or 5 kids and you're out of a house, which is very normal now in this area, I don't want you to get stuck with getting education and then forgetting it because you've got to worry about where you're going to sleep at night. So I believe in providing total wraparound services. At the beginning of COVID, I met a family that told me, how could I learn anything when I'm sleeping in a car? With 3 children, she wanted to sleep on our parking lot because of the light. She felt protected. So I ensured her that I would get her into a hotel, which I did. We paid for the hotel. But she was smart. She had a job. She needed a better job. And she was very good at the computer. So I brought her in the office, gave her some little tutorials, told her what she could do. And that was an eye-opener for me to see how many people are homeless, how many people aren't making enough money. And here's a talented person that's not even going to get a chance because she didn't dress the right way, she didn't look the right way, and her English was broken. So first of all, she said the job kept saying, are you a citizen? Are you a citizen? What did I have to do with anything? She's a human. So I had to refocus during COVID to make sure these people had jobs and job training because they felt hopeless. That's how I really got involved to pushing to have these educational programs to ensure that companies would look at us in a different light. And I have to tell you, when I first went there, they had a budget of $400,000. When I left, they have a $6 million budget. And part of what we did was we got money from companies to get the nurses trained. And I want to mention the OSHA training, we got money from all kinds of government entities and unions. Unions were very good to us. There is a component of cyber in every job that you look at, basically. And so we wrote that into the actual curriculum of what we were doing. And that was very successful for us. We did a meeting planner. Do you know how much money meeting planners make for large conferences? Do you know that they have to take internet courses on cyber or different things because they could be doing stuff all around the world? During COVID, they were doing things remotely. But when they came back to the office, they wanted to be trained too. So we trained them not only in getting a CMP, which is a certified meeting planner, and a lot of those people have a lot of computer knowledge as well. So we really opened up the door to a lot of people that would not have had the opportunity. So COVID was good in some ways, horrible in others, but it did give them an enlightened opportunity.
I just love the wraparound service and the human aspect of it all, right? Because we don't really, what's that saying that you can't really judge anybody until you walk a million miles or walk in their footsteps. It's just that opportunities that women, people of color just do not have. And education is just one piece of that, but then having shelter, having the basic needs that all of us require so we can be in that right state of mind to actually learn and study whatever profession that you're looking into. It doesn't necessarily have to be cybersecurity. So I definitely love that story, Deb, and just amazing work that you're doing and making a difference one person at a time. Sometimes we think that these obstacles are super massive and it's hard, but we don't have to look at it from holistically. We can just look at it one person at a time and making that push to move that wall forward.
I want to add that we did help a lot of people. And during the holidays, I was very fortunate that a lot of IT companies gave the kids computers, laptops, so that they could continue doing their homework. The problem came with that is that there was no broadband in the buildings or where they lived. So we brought them into the place that I worked in. We made sure that they had the separation that was proper, because a lot of the parents didn't want their children to get shots. They did not want them to get COVID shots. So we did that. We let some of them sit in the parking lot in their cars, the ones that did. But I have to say, we helped probably thousands of kids with their parents and engage them, something they probably hadn't done before. And when you talk about helping a kid and a family, you have to talk about the outcomes and give that family some hope, because most of the people that are in areas of where they don't have an education or don't have a progressive job, or like she said, HR is a hindrance. You also got to look at this also. Most of them don't have college educations. And so one of the things I think the nation has to look at is how are they going to get past that? When I was in high school, you wanted to go to college. These young kids don't want to go to college. So we have to instill, what are we going to do to put this into fruition, that we can build something where younger people want to get this particular piece of education and then go back into that pipeline for them to have access to college or to training. Because some of these kids in high school are phenomenally amazing. They can do a lot of things, but it has to be directed.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think you mentioned another fact, right? This wraparound service, the lack of internet, right? You can have the latest shiny laptop. And correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, I think you mentioned this during your presentation. Do you have additional, data points that you can share on broadband access throughout this country?
Yeah. So zip codes that are largely underserved and underprivileged experience a digital divide. So they do not receive quality broadband access or telecommunication infrastructure. And that's one area. And then two, a lot of folks in these communities don't have tech literacy. So it's a compounding issue. I believe it's AT&T that is trying to bring in discounted or free internet connection, because the way of the future is that everything is going to be run through technology. And in order to be seen as almost a legitimate person, you need to have that quality broadband access. I did also want to add on to Deb's point about universities. Even going to college now, you have to have access to internet connections. Without having that internet connection or being able to have that access, there's no way to even continue to advance further and try to build your career and build generational wealth. And another thing too is that to go to college, it's so expensive. You take on loans and endless debt, and the opportunity to go to college can even be a sign of privilege. It's even hard for students in these areas to even envision themselves going to college if they don't have anyone else to look to or help model themselves after, in a sense. Yeah, all of these things need to be tackled directly and intentionally. And it takes all hands on board, really, to address these multiple issues.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting. Where initially how we started was the lack of DEI representation in cybersecurity. But as we start digging deeper into this problem, it's much bigger than we originally thought. And it's societal. And I definitely don't want to put words in any of your mouths, but is that a fair kind of statement that it runs deeper into society and trying to bring that representation?
It definitely does. If I can speak to that, because one of our pillars is community, and it's bringing a broader definition of broadband access. Too often it's seen as infrastructure, the telecoms doing all the work, AT&T, Comcast, and all of that, and a lot of it is in rural, but it's not exclusively in rural. The lack of access, there are families in urban and suburban, particularly the zip codes that our families live. And just having access is not equity, because if they don't have the literacy, and just having literacy is not enough if they don't know how to protect the use of online, because they're the most vulnerable. So our organization on LatinX Digital Leaders Now addresses the awareness and enrolling families to subsidize monthly service programs that will make it affordable. But then we also offer the follow-up. What's next? Digital literacy. What's next? Protecting yourself while you're using online services, and even further, careers in cybersecurity. We are offering cybersecurity from basics all the way through pathways for ultimately getting certifications, and they ultimately become more. There could be more Cindys out there from parents that would have never otherwise, because when they were either immigrants, they didn't have K-12 education here, or the new career. So that holistic approach is what these connections are creating in multiple states, with Deb's Training Minds, with LatinX DLN in Illinois, with Raices in Philadelphia. Even though all three of us are in their respective states, we're connecting to go national and even international. So this platform that you're giving us an opportunity, Danny, is to share that it's organizations by us, for us, with us, that we're taking the leadership role, but we're not doing it alone. We're inviting people to join us in this movement. Philanthropy, who I hear there's less than 2% of funding to Latino community initiatives, technology and otherwise. It's for us to be those voices to say, hey, this is an investment that's going to reap many rewards, more talent, more competitive in our country as a country. But we cannot just offer traditional methods of traditional career paths. We have to go deeper and deeper into these other supports that Deb mentioned, and that Cindy also experiences with HR. We need to ensure that we get coaching, we get mentoring, the social capital that we need to build so that we can accelerate being so behind in our representation, that movement, because I think we have a lot of opportunities. And I like to be that looking at the glass half full instead of half empty, so that we can inspire and motivate and get the youth really excited to see people that look like us, that sound with experiences like theirs, that it's possible. And it's definitely an opportunity that they don't want to miss.
I love that kind of synopsis of what all three of you are trying to do, that representation. And there are many challenges that I think each of you individually are going to take charge of, and then collectively with other organizations, both private and government, because one person or one group can't do this all. It has to include everybody, and having that, a term that I use in cybersecurity, collective defense, collective mindset, if you will, to solve our biggest problems in society. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, so amazing initiative that you're doing along with so many other people. But the trend that I'm seeing here, I'm seeing a lot of pushback on DEI initiatives, or typically DEI initiatives are the first things to go in big corporations. Maybe they don't see the return on investment. That being said, how do we mitigate the pushback from DEI programs and initiatives moving forward? Or it might flow with the economy. Right now, the economy is, depending on what you read, it's in dire straits. Others are, well, we're coming out of it. So it's hard to really pinpoint what is going on, but I've seen it. There are a lot of layoffs, both in IT and cybersecurity, and probably outside of those two professions. So just again, throwing this up for whoever wants to tackle this, but how do we push back, if you will?
I think we have to reprioritize where our values are. Honestly, how much is DEIA actually costing as compared to other costs that they are experiencing? Another thing too is cutting out DEIA isn't going to do the company any favors. In fact, when a company is even going through more struggle, that might be the time to double down on DEIA and make sure that people are feeling protected, have trust in the company during a time of turmoil. There's plenty of other areas where if a company really needs to cut costs, that might essentially cut costs more, but it's again where their values are at, and a lot of those values come from historical kind of issues, not really wanting to prioritize societal issues, and that might come from a particular demographic who just doesn't see how important it really is. And if you want to hire, for example, diverse talent, you need to be able to have a DEIA lens in everything you do. And also just have a thriving workforce, you need to have a DEIA lens. So I think they can often be tagged as a easy excuse to drop something when that's really not the route to go.
Can I add to that? I agree with where DI is the first on the chopping block when there's any issue of having to cut costs. But I think that we need to, it's a mindset more than anything. I think it's a mindset. It's our responsibility to influence that mindset, that it's really bringing diversity, cultural intelligence from different, especially in cybersecurity, especially in AI. They say groupthink, everybody's thinking alike. What kind of solutions, what kind of problems are going to solve? Everybody has the same solutions to those problems. And we need to be innovative and creative and disruptive. And it's only going to happen by having different people at the table in projects and teams. And so that's value. It's an asset. It's not a cost. So it's a mindset and it's an excuse. And it's up to us to change that and to bring about a different view, not only with those making the decisions, but with youth and next generation leaders who are very diverse and growing in diversity, need to see themselves with that confidence that they're there to add value by the fact that they're diverse. And I think that's our movement, our growing collaboration and coalition is to create this positive energy of talent in a talent pool that can bring so much more than if everybody was the same.
You have me sold. So I'm ready to support this initiative however possible. Feel free to ping me on that. This has been a amazing conversation. I'm definitely energized. I'm still floating on Cloud 9 after the Raices CyberCon, and just met a lot of amazing people, just that energy, right? It's very addicting, and it helps us to strive better for our people and eliminate that groupthink in cybersecurity and whatever professions that we're in. But with that, any closing remarks, Deb, Caroline, Cindy? Again, I'm super awesome to have you on this show talking about the great things that you're all doing.
I'll just say I appreciated you doing this, and I appreciate Caroline and Cindy's partnership and relationship. But I also want to say, without diversity, America is nothing, and neither is the world. Because none of us really come from America. We come from everywhere else. We're planted here in this country. And I'm happy to say that I'm a good American, and I try to follow the pathway of what I feel America should be. But I feel that when it comes to the diversity issue, we must stand at attention and pay attention to what's happening in this country. And we also must fight for the right for the underprivileged and the underrepresented, because unfortunately, they will be the victims of whatever comes out of this whole new platform that we're looking at. I've never seen where books would be taken out of schools. We can't allow that. You may not agree with the book. You may not agree with the whole situation, but we have to agree on one thing. You can't change history. And my first job, when really going into work, I asked the person, what's your expectations? And they gave me a list. That's a job. They gave me expectations. I was to fulfill them, or I needed to find a way to fulfill them, and they needed to work with me. I was fortunate that happened. And I feel that we've lost that connection with humans, that don't look at me, don't judge me on the character or the color of my skin. Judge me on the character of my content of my character so that you can see what I can perform. And I just feel we have to say that, especially if women of different cultural backgrounds. I'm really multicultural. I come from a biracial mother, a Cuban and African American father, and I grew up in a neighborhood where it was nothing but veterans or active military that would have Japanese mothers, Korean mothers, Indian mothers, German mothers. I'm still friends with these people today. And we have to stand up and say something. We cannot let our children not get educated because the world is watching, number one. And number two, European countries far exceed our educational systems. They make a way. And I want people to understand this. If you come from several African nations, you're British educated or French. That's why they can get jobs when they come here quicker than American citizens, because they speak English and write English better. We've got to teach our children. And I'm a teacher by trade, so I had to say that.
I love that. That definitely hits close to home because my wife is an educator, and her grandfather that grew up in the Great Depression said he only saw teachers still having their job. So he educated all his daughters to be educators. So definitely have a special place in my heart for educators. Just an amazing job.
I think all of us, we have many educators in our family, in our multi-generations, educators in techies. And that's something that I mentioned earlier about being very intentional to build generational wealth. It's not just about you, who follows you, like that story of the crabs. We have to make sure that that community, that next generation family, and they, turn around and uplift the next person. And that's what we're working on doing together, and not separately, but collectively. So this platform gives us that voice, and we'll continue to have those conversations and the actions even more than conversations. But we need to have that voice in the action to show that our value is really to uplift our families, our communities, our country, and there's nothing that is negative about us as a group. There's all kinds of people in every community, but to put a label because of your color, your culture, or your religion, or your gender, that needs to change, and we're about to make that change happen. As I say, be the change you wish to see in the world, and that's what we're doing together here. From Gandhi.
Cindy, any closing remarks?
I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with Deb and Caroline. I think any action is important that we do in this space. Doesn't matter how big, how small, but every little bit counts. Just trying to be aware of all these issues, know how you can be a part of positive change, and act on that is key to resolving all of these issues. Yeah. Thanks, Danny, for having us and helping us continue to amplify these messages, because we all need to hear them and keep spreading that knowledge.
No, thank you all three. Just amazing stories. I was just thinking maybe another 2025 podcast, just all the topics that we talked about today. Just an amazing experience hearing everybody's background and values and how we're going to change society here moving forward. So again, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.